Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to have a very special different kind of video because today in Ireland it's currently the hottest day of the year. It is 27 degrees here, and I thought, when is there a better day to book a holiday? And if you're planning to book a holiday today, you need to know how much it's roughly going to cost you. So today I'm going to give you an in-depth analysis on what I spent for my Orlando trip in 2025. Let's get into it. So yes, just to recap, hello, my name's Ryan and I went to Orlando in September 2025. It was my first ever trip by myself. It was a solo trip to Orlando and I vlogged the whole series, and you can watch that vlog series here. But you may have watched the whole vlog series, you may be thinking, whoa, how much did that cost you? Well, today I'm going to get into it because I'm going to give you a full in-depth analysis of how much I spent. I'm going to tell you every last penny I spent, how much things cost roughly, and what you should do when you're budgeting your Orlando holiday for the very first time. Now, this is a video that I have wanted to do for a very long time, and truthfully, this is a video that I wanted to do throughout my vlog series. So if you watch the start of my series, the Travel Day vlog series, you will see that I mentioned I'm going to talk a lot about how much I spend and what it costs me. I'm going to, show you that as we go, how much I spend. I'm going to be very transparent on my spending in Florida. And I just didn't do that in the end. I kind of just, kind of forgot about it, to be honest with you. But I do think it's important to talk about how much this Orlando holiday costs because, listen, Orlando is stereotypically known as a very expensive holiday. When I was booking my Orlando trip and when I was then saving up for it, I saw loads of questions all the time about how much it cost, how much do you spend. I saw it on these Facebook pages like Orlando for Brits tips and Orlando for the Irish tips, and people saying how much does it cost here? Is this a good price? How much is food? How much are Ubers? How much is this? How much is that? How much for family of two? All this sort of stuff. So I think let's just get into it. Let's tell you how much I spent on my trip in Orlando. Now I will say actually as well, I got this idea for a budget video from some of my favourite Orlando travel vloggers. They're called Tattoo Tourist. I'll leave a link to their channel in the description, and I'll also leave a link to the video where they do talk about their budget quite a bit. They talk about it throughout this series, but they also have a video where they do a Q&A and they answer very in-depth about their budget, which I think is just great because when you are booking Orlando, it is an expensive trip. It is known to be expensive, and it's good to know these things before you go about the affordability. So I'm going to go into my budget and how much I spent and what I spent during my trip. Now, before I get into it, I do have a few little caveats I want to start off at the beginning, right? So first of all, the first thing I want to mention for this video before we get into it is I booked my trip in December 2024 and I went on my trip in September 2025. So all the prices that I list now reflect that time, right? And the reason I say that is because let's not get too political about it, but various things have changed in the world, various events have happened which have made things more expensive. Like I booked this trip and did this trip before the fuel crisis. I did this before, cost of living has got a lot worse since as well. So these are prices that reflect. So anything I say will reflect those times. Now I have actually looked into it a little bit and I'll get more into it as I get to the sections, but the prices haven't varied too much, but just do bear in mind, that these prices that I talk about reflect the time of booking and reflect the time of me going, which is really throughout 2025, really. The second thing I kind of want to mention as well, which I think is really important to mention, is my attitude to the holiday and my mindset to spending. So what I mean by this is everyone, budgets are personal to everybody. Everyone has a different budget. Everyone has a different way they're going to spend money. Everyone has a different idea of what a price means. So what I thought was quite reasonable, you might think is really expensive, or you might think was really cheap. What I thought was cheap, you might think was expensive. What I thought was expensive, you might see as cheap. Everyone has a different mindset to budgeting. So the kind of mindset I went into when I did my budgeting was, I'm not going to break the bank, but I'm also going to really enjoy myself. So I'm going to be careful with my costings and I'm going to be budget friendly, but I'm not going to do everything on the cheapest way possible. I did kind of put convenience over pricing and all that stuff, but also I wasn't going mad with my budgeting, if that makes sense. Now, as we get into the pricing, I'll probably be a bit more in depth, but that's my general overview. And the final thing to mention is I did everything solo. And the reason I mention that is because when you go on trips by yourself, it is just more expensive, mainly because the hotel costs. Because if you're going with someone else, you are splitting the hotel cost in half. I had to pay for the full price of a hotel room. Again, we'll get into that when we get to the thing. So without further ado, let's talk about how much I spent in Orlando, and let's start with the pre-holiday expenses. Yes, so the pre-holiday expenses, so this is what you spend before you even get to the airport. This is what you spend before you do your flights, before you get on the plane, before you sit down, seatbelts on, pretend to watch the safety announcements out of politeness, but you're not really watching it, you know. Before you do all that, this is the money that you spend. So the first thing you do, first things first, before you book your Orlando trip, before you even log on to Skyscanner or Booking.com or TUI, Virgin, whatever, you need to buy an ESTA, right? So an ESTA is your visa to get into America. Now, this will be the only cost that I will mention how much I paid and then the new cost, because since I paid my ESTA, it has gone up. So when I booked my ESTA in 2025, it was $21. An ESTA now is $40, right? Now, for those who don't know what an ESTA is basically your visa. So what happens is you go onto their official website, which make sure you do, by the way, because there are a lot of websites out there that will charge you like $80 or $90 for an ESTA, because they're third parties that will do your ESTA for you, but actually you fill out all the paperwork and then you press process. They then press the send button essentially, and they charge you 50 quid for the privilege, right? So make sure you go to the official website, which I will link somewhere here, and I'll probably just show you a quick picture of the website just so you see what you're doing. But yes, an ESTA shouldn't cost more than $40. It is very important you get an ESTA before you start booking. Not just get one, but make sure you've been approved, because if you book your trip and you do an ESTA and you're rejected for whatever reason, you can't go to America unless you then get a visa. To then get an American holiday visa, you need to book an appointment with the embassy, you need to go to the American embassy, do loads of paperwork and all that stuff. And I've heard that it is a nightmare to do that. I've heard it can be like a year's waiting list. So make sure that before you start booking your Orlando trip, get that ESTA in place. Get your ESTA approved. In my experience, an ESTA apparently can take up to 72 hours to be approved. In my experience, an ESTA is usually back to you in about 3 or 4 hours, right? But yeah, the minute your ESTA is approved, then you're good to go. So the next cost, and probably the most important cost of your trip, is you've got your ESTA approved. You can go in the country, you're allowed. The next most important thing to book is, of course, your hotel and your flights. Now, for me, I booked my hotel and flights together, and I booked it through Love Holidays. Now, I know before we get into it, some people have opinions on Love Holidays, some people have different experience with Love Holidays, and some people, and I've read the horror stories about Love Holidays and all that. By the way, we're not sponsored by Love Holidays, obviously, but I will just say, in my experience, Love Holidays have always been really good. They do the price together. You get it a lot cheaper in my experience, and I've never had issues with Love Holidays. So when I booked Love Holidays, I booked my flights and my hotel. So my flights were from Dublin to MCO with a stop off in Charlotte. That was each way, right? I then also booked my hotel, which was at the Rose Inn Point Orlando. I booked that for 12 nights. In total, the whole cost of that trip was €1,435. Now, with that €1,435, that included the flight, include the hotel, and it included a €100 fee on top for a 23 kilogram check-in case. So altogether, it was €1,435. If you want a very specific breakdown of that, according to Love Holidays, the hotel cost me €783, the flights cost me €625, and admin fees cost €27. Now, for breakdown, I think that's a really good price, right? For September, for when it was, September's apparently quite a cheap time to go as well, but yeah, it was really, really cheap. Now, I would say of Love Holidays, again, another reason I used them personally, because they were cheaper, because I recently actually did an analysis on how much it will cost. And if I booked direct myself, so if I booked my own flights and my own hotel in the same trip, it probably would have cost me about 300, 400 quid more. So for me, I think Love Holidays was really good. One thing I want to add to Love Holidays as well, and the reason why I do love booking through Love Holidays is because you can pay it monthly. You pay the amount monthly and you don't have to pay the full amount until 2 weeks before you fly out. So unlike other places, like I've heard TUI and Virgin, they might be like 6 weeks to 3 months in advance you have to pay your trip. You don't have to pay till 2 weeks before, and you do that monthly. So for me, when I booked it in the 18th of December, I paid like a €50 deposit, I think it was. And then from there, I paid 170 every month until the 18th of August, where it was then paid in full. And once it's paid in full, you get all the details sent to you. So your app confirms it all. Your tickets for your flights are basically sent to you. You put them onto the app of whatever site you're using, Aer Lingus, American Airlines, whatever. You put them onto the app you need to. Your tickets are done, job done. That's how they do it. Also as well, just to note as well, obviously I do this as a solo traveller, but I will say that the 1,435 per person, it's cheaper if there's 2 of you because you split the hotel cost. So I recently did a test of this where I booked for this September. I haven't booked, but I looked out of curiosity, and it came up as €1,300 for the same amount of time. And then if it was then 2 people per person, it was about €1,000. So again, you split the hotel costs. And again, I will say, even though at the start of the video I said that everything's got more expensive, it sort of worked out the same this year as it was last year. So again, it's just something to take into account. But yeah, that's the price, €1,435. Now, the next pre-cost that I spent before flying out to Orlando was, of course, the park tickets. Now, you're going to Orlando, you want to go to the parks, you want to go Disney, you want to go Universal, you've got to buy the tickets in advance. So what I did is I bought my tickets through Attraction Tickets. There's many other ticket sites out there. I've heard Florida tickets are really good. I use Attraction Tickets. If you're from the UK and Ireland, they're brilliant to use. So I bought a 14-day Disney and Universal combo ticket. Now, this ticket at the time included 1 day at Epic, because at this point, Epic only just opened. They were only letting you go to Epic for 1 day. With this ticket, the Disney and Universal, it includes, throughout the 14 days, you can go to any of the Disney parks. That includes Magic Kingdom, Epcot, Hollywood Studios, Animal Kingdom, the 2 water parks, which are Blizzard, and I can't remember the other one, but that's 6 parks at Disney. And then Universal, it covers the cost to go to Universal Studios, Universal Park Island of Adventure, Volcano Bay, and then for me, 1 day Epic. But now if you book in 2026, you get Epic included in that ticket for the same amount of time, right? In total, that ticket cost me €1,077, right? Now, the best thing about attraction tickets, like Love Holidays, you don't have to pay the amount of attraction tickets until 6 weeks before you fly out, right? So with attraction tickets, when I booked it, you pay a €25 deposit. You then get a link to your account, and then you can pay whatever you want up to 6 weeks before. So you have to pay the full amount 6 weeks before you activate the ticket. So for me, I had to pay the full amount by the 16th of July to activate the ticket on the 3rd September, right? But you can pay as much as you want. So unlike Love Holidays, where they charge you monthly, you can pay what you want. So if you want to just not pay anything until 6 weeks before and pay the full amount, then you can do that if you want to pay monthly. So what I did personally is I paid €100 every single month towards the ticket. And actually in the end, I think I paid off quicker because I just decided to pay it off by April or something. The reason I did that was actually because I wanted the tickets a lot quicker so I could guarantee my place at Epic. So what happens is when you book attraction tickets, they send you a link to the account. You have an account number, you log on, it says like how much, it has a little button that says how much you want to pay now. You type in your amount, you press OK, and then it deducts off the price, right? So if you want to do 100 a month, you do that. If you want to pay it, whatever. Now, the important thing with attraction tickets is you don't get the tickets sent to you until you paid in full. So even though you have bought the tickets, you don't get the ticket until obviously you pay the full amount. Now, the good thing is, for me, my experience with attraction tickets, when I pay the full amount, you get an email that says you paid the full amount, thank you very much, your tickets will be sent shortly. Within 5 to 10 minutes, you get your tickets emailed to you. You get your Disney World ticket and your Universal ticket. If you've done the combo, you get them separately. The Disney World ticket, you can link to your Disney World account, which we'll come to shortly, but you basically add your details in. It gives you a step-by-step guide how to do it. Once you've done that, it's on your My Disney World app. Same with Universal, and then that's it. And with my experience of Epic at the time is you didn't book a day, you just turned up with the tickets. But that was it. So yeah, so that's it. So book your tickets. So that's tickets. So just to confirm, the price of the tickets was €1,077.80. And I got that with a 15% discount, by the way. Now, I will point out attraction tickets, and a little tip for you. Always keep an eye on attraction tickets because they always seem to do little discounts. Like I've seen them go up to 25% off their discounts sometimes, like Black Fridays and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, just always keep an eye on attraction tickets because sometimes they always knock down the price by 15, 20, 25%. So just keep an eye on that. Now, the final thing that I recommend definitely getting in advance would be travel insurance. Now, travel insurance is very important to get, in my opinion, because if anything goes wrong, it's good to have it. I got very good travel insurance because, again, stuff that was going on globally at the time, I felt that, flights might be cancelled or something might happen, so I better just get my travel insurance good. So I ended up paying €94 for travel insurance. I got it through AA. This is an annual travel insurance that covers any trip I do throughout the year. It covers worldwide, and it was probably like the best in terms of, it was the best for medical fees, best for, basically if my trip was cancelled, it would refund my whole trip. If I got in an injury, it'd pay a lot of money. Now, again, it's up to you how much you're willing to spend and what you're willing to do there. Travel insurance also importantly, which is a common thing that I see a lot and people debate. In my experience, again, I might be wrong, but I think it's correct to say, you don't need travel insurance to go to the US. Unlike an ESTA, when you get to the borders, they don't ask you, can I see your travel insurance documentation? You don't need it, but it's highly recommend you get it, especially for the US. So yeah, I spent €94 on travel insurance. Now, a few other things that I'd recommend getting before you fly out is a few of the apps. Now, all these apps are free to download and free to set up, so these don't cost money, but it's very important you get these apps. And the apps are the Disney World app for Florida, the Universal Florida app, and Uber and Lyft. Now, Disney World is very important because you can't do anything without the Disney app. If you go Disney World and you don't have the Disney app, you can't do anything. Everything's done through the Disney app. You getting into the property, you need the Disney app. You to look at times and wait times, you need the Disney app. To buy things sometimes, you need the Disney app. To download lightning lanes and all this stuff, you need the Disney app. Disney app's so important. Same with the Universal app. Universal doesn't rely on the app as much as Disney do. But Universal, again, wait times, it's handy and all that sort of stuff. And a good Uber and Lyft, you need Uber and Lyft. We'll get to it later on, but you need transport around Florida, get Uber and Lyft. And again, very important as well, make sure that you put your card details in advance to flying out so everything's set up. So by the time you land in Orlando, you're all set up. Now, what I'm going to do before we finish this section and go on to the meat of the holiday, so when you're in Orlando, I'm going to do a few honourable mentions. So what I mean by honourable mentions is, these are costs that I spent personally before I flew out to Orlando. But you might not need to spend this money due to, again, we'll get into the reasons when we get there, but you might not need to spend this money, but it's good to budget this money in your head because sometimes these costs do just pop up unexpectedly. So a few honourable mentions. So first of all, miscellaneous stuff. So for example, I say I spent €200 on miscellaneous stuff before I flew out to Orlando. Now this stuff included sun creams, new clothes for Orlando, a suitcase, I need a brand new suitcase, a power bank, all this sort of stuff. These is money that I spent before I flew out to Orlando because I need these items. Now the reason it's honourable mention is because if you have a suitcase, if you have clothes, and you're fine. If you have a power bank, if you have all these things you don't need before you fly out, you're probably not going to spend the money. But it's just good to budget that idea because what you don't want to get is a few weeks before you fly out, you realise you need all these things and then you're dipping into your holiday fund to pay for this stuff and then you have less money in Orlando. Just take into account miscellaneous stuff before you fly out. The other thing that I would say that's again honourable mention is I spent €150 on a hotel in Dublin the day before I flew out. Again, you might not need to spend that money because you might live near the airport, you might have a lift into the airport, you might not want to spend money on a hotel before you fly out, you might want to just get the bus down that day, you might have a flight that works for you in the evening, all that sort of stuff. But again, it's a cost that you do spend sometimes, so just take into account that you might spend money pre-trip. Again, transport to the airport, I spent €40 on that. I got a bus down to, from where I live to Dublin Airport. And like I said before, you might live near the airport, you might have a lift, you might have airport parking. So just take that cost into account, that you might spend money for airport-based stuff. And another honourable mention is what I spent money on are extra tickets. So as I said earlier, I did attraction tickets. I spent over I've spent 1,077 euros on those tickets, but that didn't include extra event tickets. So when I went to Orlando in September, they had the Halloween events. So we had Mickey's Not So Scary Halloween Party, which cost me 130 euros, and the Universal Halloween Horror Nights, which cost me 89 euros. Now again, if you don't go during a time with extra tickets or you're not interested, you don't need to worry about that budget. But if you are going during that time, it's another cost. If you're going during Christmas, Disney have Christmas events on, so take that into account. If you want to go something like the Kennedy Space Museum, that will cost you money. You know what I mean? Just take these things into account, that there might be extra tickets and extra things you might want to do, so just include that in your pre-budget if applicable. But again, it's why it's an honourable mention. You might not want to. You might be going just to Universal and you're happy with the Disney and the Universal combo ticket, or even just a Disney ticket or whatever. That's it. And the final thing that I didn't myself spend money on because I didn't have the capacity to do it, but I would highly recommend doing it if you can, is an eSIM. If your phone can do an eSIM and you get an American eSIM, I recommend it, because Wi-Fi was not great in my hotel. The Wi-Fi was really hard to get in the park sometimes. The Wi-Fi was good in Disney Universal, but sometimes it could be a bit sketchy. So it's just good to get 5G on your phone, and an eSIM could cost you about 20 euros that I've seen. So again, just if you can do it, probably recommend doing it. So before we move on to get into Orlando, let's talk about my pre-cost. I spent 40 euros on an ESTA. I spent 1,435 euros on flights and hotels. I spent 1,077 euros on tickets for the parks to Disney and Universal. I spent 94 euros on travel insurance, and all the apps, the Disney, the Universal and the Uber and Lyft app were free. So the money that I spent before I even left for the airport was 2,646 euros. That's how much I had to spend. If you include the honourable mentions, which are my miscellaneous items, my hotel in Dublin, my travels to the airport, my Not So Scary Halloween party tickets and all that stuff, that would come to about 3,285 euros, right? That is roughly how much you spend before you've even got to Orlando, in my experience. Now again, you can do it cheaper or you can do it more expensive, but that's it. Now just a little bit of detail about where I stayed at the hotel, the Rosa Inn. If you do want more details on where I stayed at the Rosa Inn, if you look at my travel day vlog and my travel home vlog, I do go into detail with the Rosa Inn. I do give you a show around. Now the Rosa Inn Point Orlando was what would be classed as a mid hotel. Like, it wasn't a budget hotel, but it wasn't an extravagant hotel. I thought it was brilliant personally, but it was a mid-range hotel. So that was the rough cost of what you're doing there as well. Okay, so now we've done the pre-travel stuff. Let's get into when you land in Orlando. So yes, there you are. You have landed in Orlando. Your trip is finally here after months of saving, the months of excitement, the months of research and looking into things. You have landed in Orlando. Let's get into what I spent in Orlando. So first of all, let's talk about transport, right? I'm at the airport. I need to get to the hotel. I need transport. This is where Uber and Lyft, my two apps I downloaded, come in handy. So throughout my trip, I didn't rent a car. I didn't do anything like that. I just basically used the Lyft and Uber app. To be honest with you, I use the Lyft app more personally, but that was my personal preference. So I've actually worked out the cost that I spent with my Lyfts and my Ubers together. So throughout my whole trip, I spent $431.28. Yes. So that is $431.28, right? That includes every trip I did. That includes my airport trips, my trips to Disney, my trips to Universal, my trips back to those places, my trips to like anywhere else, right? Now, I'll actually go a bit more in detail about this. So a finer breakdown of what I spent was any of my airport trips. So from where I stayed on International Drive, the Rosa Inn Point Orlando, to the airport, MCO, cost me anywhere between $30 to $40. Now again, with Uber and Lyft, as you expect, there is surge pricing. It's more expensive at different times, it's cheaper at different times, right? So it's just when you're going and all that sort of stuff. So I spend anywhere between $30 to $40 on those trips each way, by the way, right? Now, if you ever want to work out roughly how much you're going to spend, you can do a test before you fly out. So before you fly out to Orlando, if you have Uber in particular, you can actually search your location. So you can type where you want to go to and put your start location as your hotel, let's say the Rose Inn Point Orlando. You can search it and it'll tell you how much the price would be to go to, let's say, Orlando, like Point Orlando to Magic Kingdom. It'll tell you the price there and then. It's a really good thing to do to work out your budgets, but I will go into detail about what I spent anyway. But yeah, so now to go to Disney, so to go to Disney World cost me anywhere between $15 to $20 each way. So again, going from International Drive, Point Orlando to Disney was about $15 to $20. To go to Universal, a bit cheaper because it's closer. So this includes Universal Studios, Arms Adventure and Epic. Even though Epic's in a different location, it was kind of the same distance in the end. It cost me anywhere between 7 to 12 euros each way, which again, I thought was really cost effective and cheap. Now again, if you're at a hotel and they have shuttles, you can save money by doing the shuttles. So like I stayed at Rose in Point Orlando, they had shuttles to Universal a few times a day. I used them a couple of times, they were quite good, but yeah, that's how much it costs. So just to summarize here, a trip to MCO airport would be $30 to $40. A trip to Disney from International Drive could be anywhere between $15 to $20. And a trip from International Drive to Universal could be anywhere between $7 to $12. That's how much I spent. And in total, for my 13 days I was in Orlando, I spent €431.28. Now, the next thing to talk about is food. Yep, so let's do our food budget. Now, obviously, food's very important. It's very important to budget food because you need to do it. Now, let's go into the rules with my food budget first. So when I mention food here, I'm just going to talk about your core meals. So I'm going to talk about food that you kind of have to exist. So what I mean by that is I'm going to budget how much it costs me roughly a day to have breakfast, lunch and dinner, right? The 3 meals. What I'm not going to include in this food section is like snacky stuff. So I'm not going to include when I went to Walmart and I bought loads of snacky food for the room. I'm not going to include that in here. I'm not going to include when I was in like Disney and I fancied a spring roll, a cheeseburger spring roll. I'm not going to include that. I'm not going to include like getting a slushy drink or anything like that, or any alcohol. I'm not going to include that. What I'll include in this section here is if you are eating breakfast, lunch and dinner, you're having 1 course and a soft drink or something like that. This is how much it will cost you. Now, this was actually really hard to work out because of my bank statements. It doesn't, unless you go to a specific food place or I remember spending that money in that place, I couldn't be 100% sure. So what I've done is I've worked out as an average. What I believe I spent in a day in Orlando for my core 3 meals, which is breakfast, lunch and dinner, I spent $50 a day. So I believe I spent $50 a day, right, for breakfast, lunch and dinner. Now to break that down a bit more, breakfast at the Rose Inn Point Orlando, which was a full buffet breakfast, cost me $18.31, right? Again, you can get it cheaper breakfast elsewhere. Like I'd probably go to like maybe, I don't know, an IHOP or something and maybe spend about $15, but that's the average price that I spent. The average lunch, I would say, would be about, again, $15. I say for the average sort of lunch. You would get, again, you can get a sandwich cheaper. Like I went to Subway one day and got like a Subway sandwich, crisp and a drink. That cost me $10. I'd say 10 to 15 is the average lunch if you're just doing a sandwich, crisps and or something like that, you know. Dinner, now a main course dinner could be around $20 to $30 in my experience. A few places I could say is the Golden Coral I went to. That was $25 for a buffet dinner, which was brilliant. You can go to other places as well and get, you know, I went to McDonald's one day, spent $20, you know, stuff like that. Now, again, obviously a caveat to that goes without saying, if you're eating in Disney parks, it's more expensive. So again, for example, I had lunch in Epic one day at the Blue Dragon. That cost me $55, where I had like a cocktail drink and like a orange chicken and rice. That cost me $55. So again, it's more expensive if you eat in the parks compared to eating at International Drive. And again, it's your own preference. If you want to eat more expensive, you can. If you can't. In my experience of eating quite reasonably and quite cheap, it cost me $50 a day. The next thing to mention, which again could be an honourable mention really, but I'm going to sort of go into detail anyway, is spending money. So I see a lot of people ask this a lot, or they go, oh, how much should I bring for spending money? How much is this? Is this amount enough spending money? Is 500, is this amount? Like, again, spending money is very truthfully, it's down to your own thing. Are you willing to spend a lot of money? Are you into souvenirs? What is your experience? Like, I can't really tell you how much spending money to bring because I don't know what you're into. Do you want to buy all the Disney stuff or not? Do you want to just buy stuff? Do you not want to buy it? What experiences do you want to have? So what I'll do here is I won't talk about what I spent because I'll do that near the end of the video and it's quite depressing. But I will give some mentions to what I think you should spend money on. So what I'll mention now is not spending money per se and how much you should have, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to recommend some things that I bought that I believe are essential. I think these items here that I bought are very important to have because they add to your experience. So I'll start off with this here, the Magic Band, right? So I bought this from Disney World. It's the Magic Band. It cost me $37 to buy, and in my experience this is an essential piece of kit. So what the Magic Band does is you obviously put it on your wrist, and then from there, so with the Magic Band you put it on your wrist like this, and then with the Magic Band, once it's paired up to your app, it helps you get entry. So you saw a lot of my videos, I did that to get entry, which is really handy. It also will vibrate and light up with experiences. So if you do Fantasmic, for example, or certain rides, it will interact with the rides. And also as well, again, if you see some statues, you can do that and it'll make sounds. It just adds the experience, and I do recommend getting one of these. Like if you're doing a Disney trip specifically, you need this. It's so handy and it's so good to have, in my experience. The next thing I recommend, which is an essential to get as well when you go to Universal, is this here. So this is my Halloween Horror Night cup, but this is the refillable cup. Now I mentioned this a lot in the vlog series, how good these are. Now this cost me $20 to buy it first time round. In reality, the cup only costs about $7 because the refills then are $13. So what this is you buy this and you can refill this as much as you want. So when you first buy, it's $20. So $7 for the cup, $13 for the refills really. You go around the park, there's loads of refilling stations and you can fill up with any sodas, Coke, Fanta, root beers, water, energy drink waters like, you know, Oasis, Powerades and all this sort of stuff. You can fill up with these and it's unlimited, right? You only have to wait 10 minutes between refills, but it is absolutely unlimited, right? It costs $20 to buy it and it's $13 a day. You can use the same cup. So I use this cup multiple times on multiple trips. This is something I really recommend buying. It is essential to have it. And now I don't know if I go to Orlando again like next year, will I be able to use this one or do I need to buy a new one? But I would happily buy a new one because it's essential and it saves so much money as well. Like throughout the day, you can just rehydrate all the time with various different drinks, and it's hundreds of selections in my, probably not hundreds, but they've got a lot of selections. So this is essential as well, I think. The next thing I'd recommend, which I think is essential, again, going back to Universal, is this. It's a wand. Now this cost me $39 as an Epic, and if you're a Harry Potter fan, I just think it's a really good experience. For $39, it's really worth it because once you buy this wand, and you can see in all the videos I do Universal, you can go around to Hogsmeade, Diagon Alley, the French place in Epic, I forgot what it's called now, Paris, probably it's called, I don't know. You can go around and you can just cast spells and all that sort of stuff. And it's really fun. If you're a Harry Potter fan, this is such an immersive experience and it's so worth it. For $39, it's really worth the experience. So I think budget this if you're a Harry Potter fan. The next thing I'd recommend as well is quite pricey, but again, if you're a fan of it, go. If you're in Hollywood Studios and you are a Star Wars fan, you want to build your own lightsaber, right? You can see the video that I did it with. I did the whole experience, the build your own lightsaber experience. It's a really good experience, really fun. You have a lightsaber. Now it's quite pricey. It is $266. Listen, it's an expensive experience, but it's so worth it. It's such a fun experience to do. So I really recommend, if you're a Star Wars fan and you love Star Wars, build a lightsaber. And the final thing I'd recommend budgeting as well is lightning lanes. So yeah, so if you want to put aside maybe $100 or $200 for lightning lanes, I recommend that as well, because if you were quite tight on time in Disney one day and you want to get through rides quickly, you could buy lightning lanes. Now, you buy lightning lanes through the Disney World app. Some lightning lanes are cheaper than others. They're very priced. Some are individual ones. So, for example, I think the Guardians of the Galaxy ride, Rise of the Resistance and Snow White and all these rides, Tron, you have to pay individually. I think they're anywhere between $15 and $25 to skip the line. Or you can buy a cluster. So like the other rides, like, lesser sort of rides, not lesser rides, but, other rides, you can buy like a lightning lane that gives you free rides for like $20 or something. Again, I recommend doing lightning lanes. It's not essential to do it, but it does add to experience. You want to get through lines very quickly, is my experience. So those are just some things that I recommend you do. You don't have to, but I just recommend to add to your experience. And then of course, then there's merchandise on top if you want to go out and buy various things, whatever merchandise. Now, this is where we get to the nitty gritty now. This is where we get a bit sad. Not sad, but a bit, oh geez, okay. How much did I actually spend while in Orlando? So, my total cost in Orlando, first of all, through looking through my bank statements, the total amount I spent on food and general spending, so that includes the $50 a day budget and all the merchandise stuff I bought. In the 2 weeks I was there for 13 days, I spent on food and general spending $1,800 is what I spent during that time. If you want to add on top my cost for the Ubers and all that stuff, I spent $2,231.28. That's how much I spent while I was in Orlando. That's the money that I spent. Like, listen, it's a lot of money, but the experience of it all was great. So with that in total, really, I probably spent around just under $5,000 on the whole trip, right? So my pre-trip stuff, my trip stuff while I was there, I spent about that much money, right? Now let's just get real quickly about the trip, right? About the spending. I had a great time. It was fantastic. It was an expensive trip. I've never spent that amount of money on a trip in the past, but it was so worth it for me, and I would 100% do it again, right? A couple of things just to add about the budget. Do I think that that's a fair budget? Yes. Do I think I'll spend that amount of money again? Probably not, because as I mentioned before, there's stuff that I've already bought. So for example now, I wouldn't need to buy an Ester because I already have one, unless obviously I go after the Ester expires after 2 years, right? I wouldn't need to buy another Savvy's Workshop, which cost me $266 because I already have one. Would I buy another wand? Probably, because I think it'd be good to have another wand. Would I need to buy the miscellaneous stuff? Again, like I mentioned before, the miscellaneous stuff. Would I spend that? Probably not. I have everything I need now for Orlando. Again, I went during my first time and I just needed various things for my Orlando trip. Now, truthfully, can you do it cheaper than that? Yeah, of course you can. You can do it cheaper. Like, I think, to be fair, I was quite cost effective. Like, again, Ubers, maybe I could have been a bit more. Again, with my Ubers as well, even with the Ubers I mentioned there, if you watch my vlogs, you know with Universal, I went back and forth throughout the day. So I could have saved half that cost there through just not doing that. I could have saved various bits of money here and there. And if I went again, I would save money. You know, I bought various things when I was out there because I didn't have the stuff that I kind of learned I would take next time round. All these sort of things you learn with the budget. But yeah, now a few little tips or tricks I'll say for saving money. The only thing I'd really recommend is Revolut. I used Revolut when I was out there. Again, not sponsored, but when I used Revolut, I had a Revolut Pocket. So when you download Revolut, you can have these things called pockets where you can put money into and you can have it in different currencies. So what I did is I kept an eye on the American exchange rate, and when the American exchange rate was really good, I transferred money to the American Pocket, so I got the exchange rate. So I think actually there was one day where the average exchange rate for euros to dollars at the time was about 114, a euro to $114. There was a day it was like 119 or something. So that's when I transferred the money and I made profit on that, really. Yeah, so with that, that's been my budget video. I really hope you enjoyed, and I hope you enjoyed how in-depth I've been with the spending and what I spent money on and how it all worked. I've tried to be as transparent as I can be with the spending and try to be as in depth and go into details. Again, your spending might be different to my spending. And also, if you watch this video and you have a few tips that I haven't mentioned for like budgeting or for the trip, do comment them below. Leave a comment and say, oh, you missed this bit, or oh, I recommend this, or oh, do this and you save money. If you have any of those tips, do comment them below, because I would love to see them myself, and to help other people as well. And if you do have any questions as well and you want to ask me in depth about my experience and money I spent or whatever, and about budgeting, you can always message me directly as well. I'm happy to be messaged directly and answer your questions. So yeah, that's it. Anyway, thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you next time.